All right, it's another show. It's time for some pre-cals. What's going on today?
Insomnia, insomnia, insomnia. Gary,
Insomnia.
yeah, we're going to talk about insomnia today. We have Andrew Colsky with us. He's part of really the founder and CEO of the National Sleep Center. It's a service for patients who are struggling with sleep issues and, in particular, insomnia. So we'll hear about CBTI and sort of his version of how they're able to deal with patients who have different types of sleep issues. And he also has his own show, his own radio show called Sleep Science Today. In
Oh,
fact,
that's pretty cool.
he's known as the sleep science guy. So I'm interested to see what Andrew has to share with us today. And I think that as sleep apnea therapy continues to diversify, I think we'll see some industry shifts start to refocus around insomnia because, ultimately, CPAP manufacturers, CPAP distributors are, our world is going to change a little bit. So my guess is that we'll see a lot of dialogue around insomnia and insomnia treatment.
No, I agree.
Excellent.
With the growth of, like we've talked about on here, the GLP-1s and the apnea drugs, you're still going to suffer from COMISA. And these patients are still going to need the therapy to manage insomnia. I mean, from time to time, I struggle, and boy, when it comes along and you can't shut your brain down, and you've got a big day ahead, there can't be anything more frustrating than not being able to sleep. So I'm looking forward to what Andrew's got to share today. He's got such a lively personality. I think it'll be fun to hear from him.
Hearing what you said, now I'm not very familiar with him like you both are, but it sounds like it's going to be a fun show. Somebody that has their own show coming on ours, it brings a completely different dynamic. And on top of that, insomnia, I think it's going to be fun.
Let's get into it.
All right, on to the show.
SleepTech Talk is brought to you by Fisher & Paykel. Fisher & Paykel Healthcare is a leader in CPAP mask design and innovation for over 20 years. Their unique technologies have benefited millions of OSA patients through their top CPAP masks. These advancements continue to further enhance patient experience and outcomes. Now, a word from our sponsor, Medbridge Healthcare. Medbridge Healthcare is a leading provider of sleep lab management services and home sleep apnea testing. Medbridge partners with hospitals, healthcare systems, and medical academic institutions to offer comprehensive, fully integrated services for sleep disorders.
SleepTech Talk is sponsored by React Health. Within our LunaPAP device line, each offering is FDA approved, encompassing CPAP, APAP, bilevel, and bilevel ST models. Our thoughtfully selected array of PAP interfaces and accessories complement our LunaPAP device line while accommodating diverse patient requirements.
Lights out.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast with your hosts and friends, Emerson, Kerr, Robert Miller, and me, Dr. Gerald George Mannikarote. Folks, we have another exciting episode for you, but before we start, we just want to say thank you so much for all the love that you've been showing us. Continued likes, shares, subscriptions. Thank you so much for that. Don't forget, there is a comment section. Be sure to comment and put your thoughts in there. We want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, without whom we can't do what we're doing. And so be sure to check them out, and there's more information in the show notes. With that being said, let's get started. Robert, what's going on today?
Hey, Jerry, we're going to jump right in today. I'm excited to introduce Andrew Colsky. He's joining us today. He's fondly known as the sleep science guy. He is the founder of the National Sleep Center. Andrew is a leading expert in behavioral sleep medicine, trained at the prestigious University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine. His international radio show, Sleep Science Today, and he has a passion for evidence-based sleep care and making it accessible. Andrew's at the forefront of addressing insomnia, sleep apnea, and more through innovative solutions. We want our audience to join us as his expertise on how technology is transforming the way we achieve better sleep. Andrew, welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for joining us, taking some time out of your own podcast recording to be with us today. We're excited to have you, and tell us a little bit about yourself. And you have some credentials that I actually am not even sure what some of them are. So you'll have to explain to us some of your background and your training.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. Like all three of you, my goal here is to talk about sleep and educate people about sleep and ways they can improve their own sleep and sleep better. Real quick about my background. I'm one of those people that is a lifelong learner. I love to collect degrees, and they all kind of fit together if you let me explain how they fit together, but it takes some time. Anyways, the short version is I'm an attorney, which allows me to work from the end of Americans with Disabilities Act. So people who need workplace accommodations because they have sleep issues, that's how that fits in. I'm a clinician, so I do the actual sleep work with the behavioral sleep medicine side of it, and an entrepreneur. So I look for new ways to bring new opportunities to help people improve the types of treatments and things that are out there. So that's the short version.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about the National Sleep Center, because that's how I think you and I originally met. We were talking about, different treatments for insomnia. I think I conveyed to you how difficult that space can be to, have a service that a patient has access to, and also that might be able to use their health insurance in some cases to be able to pay for some of those types of services. So give us some insight as to what the National Sleep Center is, what it does, and how you're able to impact patients with insomnia.
Sure. So National Sleep Center is kind of how I started when I got into the business of sleep work. And that's all about treating people with behavioral sleep issues. So your primary patient you're going to see is someone with insomnia. You may see someone with nightmares. You may see someone who has issues with CPAP compliance, or maybe they want to learn what other options exist if they're unable to tolerate a CPAP. So anything related to the behavioral side of the sleep medicine. We don't prescribe medications. We don't do the MD side of it. But with that, we're able to see patients. And the hard part, you mentioned that dirty word that starts with an I called insurance. And I'm going to be straight up and honest with you. I tried very hard to work with the insurance industry. We accepted insurance for quite a while, and we got to the point where it was untenable. And that's a sad statement about our healthcare system, but that's a whole other podcast. So what we did and what I recognized is, okay, so this isn't going to work, but the actual cost of treatment is still pretty high for people. So how do we get treatment to them? And what I realized was there's different opportunities using technology to do that. So while I still treat patients on that personal basis, for those who are looking for a lower cost option, I've been working hard to develop what I call Sleep Coach Live. And Sleep Coach Live is almost ready to launch, and it will be a website where people can go and they can sign up for CBTI work for insomnia, and they will be able to work with a live coach, in this case, me, for example, and the communication happens through text back and forth between them using my sleep diary app that I have, which is called Counting Sleep. And then we have the website side, which is Sleep Coach Live. And through the combination using that type of technology, they can get the basics of CBTI with a live coach at a lower cost. So that's how I address that particular issue.
Andrew, when you think about your journey to this, what really motivated you to focus in on insomnia? I mean, there's 84 disorders, out there. What drives you to insomnia in particular?
So great question. And putting on my entrepreneur hat, my answer is the marketplace. Because most people, when they call looking for help, they're looking for help with insomnia. So even though I'm trained and able to help them with some other issues, additionally, that's just not who comes to the door. So you got to treat the ones who come to the door. And insomnia is, number one, insomnia is so common. But number two, the treatment for insomnia can be really effective. And it's, how do I say it? It's not a lot of talk therapy. It's much more numbers and data driven, and it's much more precise. And I like working with issues where someone comes in, they have a particular problem. We can kind of figure out what exactly is going on, then apply a certain methodology and get them to where they want to be in a relatively short time. And that's what insomnia treatment and CBTI is all about, for example. So that's why I like that. Now, we also treat people who have nightmares. But again, the treatment is similar to what you might do for insomnia from the standpoint that you're able to have a pretty precise set of things that you're going to do and resolve the issue in a relatively short period of time. So, as you can see, I really enjoy that type of sleep work.
Andrew, so you said something that's really fascinating. One is about nightmares, and we'll get to that. But before that, about insomnia for the layperson and even trained individuals, insomnia is like a very nebulous thing. But you said it's very precise. You're able to get numbers. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the precise piece of it?
Sure. I was actually talking to a new potential patient last night who she had these types of questions. And I said to her, the treatment for insomnia is called CBTI. And she said, oh, I've worked with a therapist in the past for my depression and other things. They do CBT. And I said, well, let me stop you right there and explain to you the difference. CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. It means a therapy that focuses both on your cognitions and your behaviors. So that is a very common type of therapy used in mental health disorders. When it comes to insomnia, it's called CBTI because it does use cognitive and behavioral elements, more behavioral than cognitive, but it does use cognitive and behavior, but it does it in a very precise way. And what I mean by that is anyone who is doing CBTI is going to be keeping a sleep diary. And a sleep diary means every day when they wake up, they're going to mark down what time did you go to bed? What time, did you wake up? How long did it take you to fall asleep? Did you wake up in the middle of the night? They're going to have all these data points that they're going to be recording every single day. And when they meet with the therapist, I meet my clients weekly, they're going to show me that chart. And I'm going to have this whole chart spreadsheet of data in front of me. And it looks like a bunch of gobbledygook that means nothing unless you're trained to look at it. And when you're trained to look at it, you can look at it and right away, you can pretty much figure out what's going on. And so by using that data, we can then make adjustments to try and address the needs that are there. And then by tracking it the next week, the next 2 weeks, we can see if that data has changed in the right direction or the wrong direction. So it's really kind of cool when you're able to lay those things out and look week to week and see the numbers change.
I would imagine by the time they get to you, they're very frustrated. These patients. What does that typical patient look like? I'm imagining they've tried so many different gadgets and self-help routines when they get to your office. So if you could describe what a typical insomnia patient looks like by the time they finally land at your door.
Yeah, great question. The very typical thing that you will hear from someone who is calling up to seek treatment is at some point in time, they started to have trouble sleeping. Now, that could mean they had trouble falling asleep, they had trouble waking in the middle of the night, or they have trouble waking too early, or a combination of the three. And so they didn't know what to do. They tried a bunch of, first what they do is they lay in bed and they try to sleep better, which means they just wrap themselves up in anxiety and make themselves sleep worse. So when they figure out that that's not working, then they try some over-the-counter things, which they find out that doesn't work for me either. Then they'll go typically to their primary care physician, most of which it's not their fault, but they're just not trained in sleep medicine in medical school. Or if they are, they get a very little bit of it. So their, response is to prescribe a medication. Sleep medications, basically in general, do not bring you into the stage 3 sleep that you need. They're more sedatives. They more kind of knock you out and give you the perception that you're sleeping and you're not really sleeping. So they'll get on these sleep meds and they provide some relief to a certain degree, but they're really not solving the problem. And eventually the person says, well, I want to get off these meds because I don't think they're good for me to stay on long-term. And the meds even tell you they're for short-term use. Or they also are still having problems with insomnia, even though they've got these meds. So the typical patient will come in having gone through that trajectory, and they're saying, well, I heard about the CBTI. Typically, they finally got to a sleep doctor, and the sleep doctor recommended you should try CBTI. And so, some of them will come to us and we will talk with them, do a full analysis. We'll get that story probably 90 out of every 100 times. And then we work with them to eventually get them off all the meds and get their sleep back on track.
I do want us to get to your sleep science show, Sleep Science Today, at some point. But I wanted to go back and can you give us a quick sort of story on a patient success that you've had where you've helped a patient, because this is a chronic problem. It's a significant problem. Technically, if you're doing the math, it's a bigger problem in the U.S. today from a financial standpoint. The total impact of insomnia is a little larger market than sleep apnea. So to give us a great story about a patient success that you've encountered.
Sure. It's funny because as I'm trying to think of a specific story, so many of them follow exactly the same pattern. Let me describe the pattern that we get. The patients will typically come in, just like I said, they have that backstory that I said, and they'll want to start working to address their situation. So we start them doing a sleep diary and we take a look at what's currently happening with them. And you'll see that, they get into bed and then they're having trouble sleeping and they play on their phone. And eventually, an hour later, they might fall asleep a little bit. And then, middle of the night comes and they're getting hot and things are happening. And then they kind of wake up and then they're like, uh-oh, I'm up. I'm going to have a terrible day today. I better try harder to sleep. So they lay there and they ramp up their anxiety to the top, and lo and behold, they're not sleeping any better. I wonder why. And then they toss and turn. Eventually they fall back asleep for a little bit, and then they drag themselves out of bed for the day because they have to be at work or their kids are up or whatever. And so that's a very typical story. And what we will do is we will help them to address the issues that are causing them to have fragmented sleep and that are exacerbating all their anxiety. And the short version of it is we get them to a point where they learn how to use their bed for sleep and nothing else, and do all these other things that they want to do outside of their bed. And we teach them the important thing that trying to sleep means all you're doing is ramping up your anxiety. So let's work through that and find more effective ways to deal with this. And so they start off, and I tell them, first 2 weeks that we start, it's going to get worse before it gets better. You're going to start off following the treatment first week, and the first thing you're going to say to yourself is, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It's going backwards. My sleep is getting worse. I need to just go find some other med to take or something. So I prep them for that, and lo and behold, they typically all come back and say, yep, I'm wondering whether you know what you're doing and things are getting worse. And I said, good, because that means the program's working. Talk to me again in 2 weeks and let's see where you are. And about 2 weeks later, things start to kind of fall into the right pattern. And they start to say, wow, I slept all the way through the night last night. That's the first time that's happened in like 2 years. And then from there, it gets better and better. So that's a very typical story that I will hear from patients.
Are you a sleep tech looking for new opportunities? Well, Medbridge Healthcare is one of the largest employers of sleep technologists, and they are growing. If you are a sleep technologist interested in a new position, potential paid relocation, or looking for a career advancement, consider a career with Medbridge Healthcare. Now back to the show. Fisher & Paykel Solo is the world's first auto-fit CPAP mask. It simplifies setup with its revolutionary auto-lock technology. Simply stretch to fit, touch to adjust. Go to fphcare.com/solo.
Andrew, can you talk, first off, thank you for walking us through that patient journey. So if that's the case, how would you work with somebody that has the nightmares?
Great question. So some people have insomnia and nightmares. Some people just have nightmares that wake them, which is part of the definition of a nightmare, is it has to wake you up in the middle of the night. And there's another therapy, again, sounds very similar, but this one is called CBTN. It's CBT for nightmares. And CBT for nightmares is designed and developed to specifically address what happens to our body that leads to these nightmares. And again, it's about a figure like a 6 to 8 week time period where the patient is going to be working with a therapist weekly. And what we do is first we identify what's going on. You know, we have to know if there's co-occurring disorders or other things, and we have to be able to address those. But if it's a typical nightmare type of case, the person will have started to experience these nightmares that are really frightening, and they wake them up because they're so horrifying and horrible, the thoughts that they get. And so we work with them to start to identify what those thoughts are, where they might be coming from, or what they might be tied to. Oftentimes you're going to find that the scenario in the nightmare kind of mimics something that was actually really happening in their life at some point. Not 100% of the time, but in general, you'll find that. And then we work on teaching them to sort of rescript their nightmare, meaning that, you know, if your nightmare says that you're going to wake up in the middle of the night because there's a monster that's come out from under your bed and he's getting ready to attack you with a knife, and then you wake up because you're like, you know, freaking out from that, then we're going to rescript it where maybe this monster that comes out from your bed is a puppy. And instead of holding a knife, it's holding a bone and it's getting ready to lick your face because it wants your attention. And as crazy and weird as this sounds, this is part of what we do. It's called rescripting. So that you're priming your thoughts and you're priming your mind that when you go to bed that next night, and now you've primed it with this new script, your mind takes over and it starts to fill in the picture with the rescription as opposed to the nightmare. Again, that's a very brief description of how it works.
Well, we appreciate you taking on those complicated patients. As a former sleep tech, I would say just give me the uncomplicated sleep apnea patient any day. Would you tell us a little bit about your program, your show, Sleep Science Today? We want our audience to certainly be exposed to it as well. And we know that we're their favorite podcast, but we don't mind if you're number two. But tell us a little bit about your program, what type of guest, what the content looks like, and how our audience would be able to find your show.
Sure. Well, first off, I want to say I've had, you know, some patients who've called us number two as well. So I think in a different context, but, you know, sometimes things don't work out. But anyways, the whole point here is educating people. So to me, the more educated the people are about their sleep, the better sleep they're going to get. So Sleep Science Today is started off and still is a radio show first, and we're on the UK Health Radio Network. So we reach 54 English-speaking countries around the world. And then once the radio show goes up, we then put it out on YouTube and all the different podcast networks so that we speak with sleep experts about all different types of sleep issues that you may have. These are the researchers and the people developing the treatments and you know, highly credentialed folks. And so we share that information. As a result, since the goal is to educate people, we then try to take that and break it down and have some shorter things. So we got the long form radio show, which is about a 40-minute show of actual content, a 60-minute show total with commercials. And then we take important content on YouTube and we will do shorter videos. So maybe a 5 or 10-minute video about insomnia or, you know, some other sleep disorder, whatever it may be. And then we try to take that and even bring it down to some shorts where it can go out on social media so that we're hitting all age ranges, but again, bringing people back to legitimate sleep information. So one of the new things we just launched is the Sleepy Teeny series, which is a lot of non-alcoholic, non-caffeine drink mixes that you could have before bed during your wind down time that might help you to kind of doze off a little bit. That's one thing. We're just about to launch next month the Cash Bed. The cash bed is going to be something where we're go out into public areas that are busy with lots of people, and we've got a bed laid out that they get to spin a wheel and decide what type of game they're going to play. It could be trivia, it could be 20 questions, it could be, anything off the wheel. And they lay down in bed to do this thing, again, to bring awareness to sleep. And we bring a message here. It's all about sleep. Even though it's fun, it's still sleep related. So we've got the cash bed going on. And then another thing, I'm hitting you with all this stuff. Another thing we have is, as far as I know, we are the only or one of the only free sleep support groups that is led by a qualified technician, meaning if someone has a sleep issue, whatever it is, and they're looking to join a support group, it's an online group. We have people from all over the world. And all they have to do is go to sleepsupportgroup.com. It'll take them right to where they sign up. They'll get a notification of the meeting, and then they can come. We do it right now once a month, and they can talk with others with sleep problems. And all this stuff is free. There's no charge for any of the things I'm talking about, but it's all about getting the word out and educating people. So we go from the long form technical all the way to the short form fun, but it's all about sleep.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much. That's awesome to hear all the activities you guys are doing to spread the science of sleep. But we are out of time. Where can people get information about the show and you for that matter?
Yeah. So the easiest thing to do is just remember Sleep Science Today. So if you go to sleepsciencetoday.com, you'll be able to find all the different things that I've talked about, the support group, any of the other things, the radio show, the YouTube channel, it's all out there. So everything falls under that name, Sleep Science Today.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate you joining us. And folks out there, be sure to check out Andrew's channel, Sleep Science Today. And thank you so much for joining us as well. We can't thank you enough for all the likes, the subscriptions, and the shares. A huge shout out once again to our sponsors, and we say until next time, lights on. All right, it's another show. That means it's time for some post calibrations. Emerson, what are your initial thoughts?
I really appreciate guys like Andrew that are thinking outside the box on ways to educate patients and drive the message of insomnia. It's frustrating, and we shared in the pre-show, the pre-cal notes that I've suffered from it from time to time, and it's so frustrating. And I can't imagine for the patients that don't know what to do and how frustrated they are. And we asked him, what happens? What does that typical patient look like? They're at their wits' end, and it's so refreshing to hear his story and how he's managing this, innovative ideas to get their attention and train them. Loved hearing that. He's really got a neat program, and it's I'm glad he's also got a podcast that people can dial into and listen and find out more. Not to mention nightmares. It was such an interesting take on that to hear his perspective. I'm so glad you asked that question, because it took just opened up our dialogue to a new place, and very fascinating.
I get a question or two right once in a while, so thank you.
Good job, Jerry. Hey, I have to say that, he takes on the patients that really, to be honest with you, there's probably not a lot of providers who really want to have to engage and spend the time, because I have to imagine that there is a lot of time involved. And shame on the insurance industry for not covering the services that are needed by some of those patients that, he mentioned, because it sounds like he tried to go down the traditional payer provided service route, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work. So, kudos to him and for staying committed to it. There certainly is a level of I think just dedication to making sure that patient gets a good night's sleep. Because I'm with you, Emerson. There's nothing more frustrating than not being able to sleep. I mean, when you've got COMISA and you have multiple issues, so you need something to help you breathe so that you can sleep. And then when you have an opportunity to sleep, you can breathe, but you can't go to sleep. I mean, my gosh, what a conundrum. First use of the word conundrum in SleepTech Talk history.
Brilliant, man. You just elevated our game.
Thanks.
I really like that conundrum.
My contribution to this
brings a tear to my eye.
Hey, I just became bamboozled. by
Oh,
the conundrum.
nice.
One-upmanship.
Yep.
Oh, you just said another word,
Yeah.
one-upmanship. That
We
has
we
more
are
syllables.
vocabulary kings today. I don't know
Oh.
what's going on. We better stop.
We,
Yeah, we better stop.
or we will get nightmares and we're going to have to call in. So,
That's right. Good stuff, guys.
all right. Well, gents, I think that was a great show, and I look forward to our next one.
Absolutely.
All right, folks out there, thank you so much. And until next time, cheers.
Be sure to check out our clinical sponsor, Sleep Review Magazine. More details in show notes.